When you hear someone say, it's a really technical track, you'd be forgiven for simply assuming that they're discussing the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. While there are no massive elevation changes there, it is loaded with significant ones, and many corners have blind approaches with apexes at the top of an abrupt rise. The track also has some rather bizarre grip characteristics, which adds to the technical challenge. The track, literally carved out of a cornfield that opened in 1962, is considered a true driver's track. Along with its history of being a favorite with Can-Am, Formula 5000, Trans Am, IMSA, and IndyCar, it also became the home of the SCCA's National Championship runoffs from 1994 to 2005 and was an absolute hit with racer and fan alike. And oftentimes, the best racing at those runoffs were classes that featured Mazda Miatas due to their amazing handling and their ability to roll speed through the tumultuous Ohio countryside. And tonight, the track known simply as Mid-Ohio hosts round 4 of the second season of the Full Send Sim Spec Miata Esports iRacing Series. Hi everyone, I'm Greg Creamer. Welcome to Mid-Ohio. Joining me is SimTV's Kyle Heyer. And Kyle, this place is, in a word, fun.
This is one of my favorite racetracks in North America, and as far as classic racetracks go, it's one of the originals in North American road racing. It's got so much flow, it is fast, and it's got some great corner complexes, especially the runs through turns 4 and 5 up over Madness and down the hill. Just some great flowing sequences that are perfect for Spec Miata racing. 2 races a night, 2 25-minute shows, and I'm here for it, Greg. Really excited to join you again.
It's great to have you back. And yes, this track in many ways I think was almost designed with the Miata in mind. I remember working a corner doing my research for the runoffs one year, and David Daugherty was running a Nissan 200 SX, and I was flagging at Madness up at the corner station in turn 5. And I could swear I heard him giggling as he was driving through that corner in this beautiful little drift. Talked to him afterwards, and he said, I'm chuckling most of the way around a lap on this track. It is that fun. And in my opinion, the runoffs never should have left there. It is a track that rewards driving ability over horsepower and over huge suspension money. And it was the perfect home for the runoffs. And I can't wait for tonight. This is going to be phenomenal with the quality of drivers we have and the new rules package for these Miatas for this second season. I'm pumped.
It hasn't really changed a lot either since its construction in 1962. Just a couple of small changes. Let's have a look here at the track map, though, real quick, Greg. 2.26 miles and 13 corners. It all starts with a run through the very fast turn number 1. Pretty flat corner, but it heads up to the keyhole. That's a famous corner at turn number 2 and a great passing opportunity as well.
Yeah, and it's really tricky because it falls away on the exit, and if you don't actually get that corner right, it's tough to get to the throttle. And look what it leads onto. That's a straight that's almost 3,000 feet long with that little kink. Turn 3 is all it is. It's absolutely flat chat. And then down into Madness where it dips down, climbs really abruptly. Not a huge amount of elevation, but it's abrupt. And then you drop down. One of the tricky things about turn 4, if you've got some skills, Kyle, and a couple of other things, you can make an outside pass there work.
You certainly can, and then you head down into a couple switchback sections into Thunder Valley, they call it, through 9 and 10. Up into 11, that's a kink back to the left. Climbing up towards the carousel at turns 12 and 13. Morgan Burkhardt is headed through there now. Let's talk to him real quick in the number 40. He's currently the top driver in qualifying. Morgan, take us through a lap of Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course.
Hello guys, it's a really fun track coming down the front straight. This is and this car is a slow enough car. You can kind of just lift off the throttle using this little curb, the divider between pit out and turn 1. You can use that curb, get a little bit of extra rotation, just really roll in all the speed that you can down this straight into the keyhole. I don't really like this corner as a passing zone, but it's vitally important to get a good run out of here to go down the straight to China Beach. I use second gear on the apex. It's kind of a double apex corner, kind of keeping it tight the whole way around. Gonna steal a little bit of draft off of Rocco, just a little bit. Coming down this straight, it's not really straight. It gets a little sketchy when you're side by side and bump drafting. But like I said, it's probably the best passing zone on this track is coming down into China Beach. And as we get here, it's hard on the brakes, down 2 gears. You're gonna wanna try and hit that apex a little bit better than I did this lap, but kind of not using all the track on the exit just so you can set up into Madness. Coming up over the hill, or gets a little bit light, you're gonna worry about the wheel spin. And then still all of this section is just rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. You want to place the car right after the first part so you can get the rest of it correct. And then through this double right-hander, lift off in the middle and then back onto the throttle, using the curb, using the grass, using all of this, this over the crest. The car gets light, you use that to your advantage so you can carry a little bit more speed, get a little bit of wheel spin in, you can make it rotate more. Coming out of Thunder Valley, this is just a lift of the throttle, using all the red that you can, and then here, a big balancing act. The car gets real light over the crest again. You want to use as much of that to your advantage as you can, and then through the carousel on the exit, carrying as much speed onto the front straight, and that is a lap of Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course.
Well, thank you very much, Morgan. Great lap as always, and it really pointed out, doesn't it, Kyle? Obviously you've got that run through 4 up and over 5 and down through 6, but that little kink turn over 7, it's over a blind apex and brow. You flick through 8, guess what? Turn 9, up over, it's blind turn in, up over a brow right at the apex. And to me, one of the corners that really doesn't get enough recognition here is turn 11, because you're coming through Thunder Valley, and as you're making that left-hand turn up and into 11, it is blind in the approach, and then it flattens out right as you crest. And if you turn in too early, you're going straight off, and at that corner, you're going into really, really fast. And so that's, pretty critical. He talked about, that when you start into the carousel, it flattens out right when you, want to be doing that balancing act, so you have to be ready for that. And let's not forget, as we saw, Kyle, turn 1, it's flat, but it's very much a sweeper. It's really quick, and it's got a blind turn in because there's a bridge there.
Yeah, and that bridge, unfortunately, no longer exists in the real world. That was just recently torn out, but this laser scan is circa 2013. So in some ways, this track has changed, but in others, it has not. But with qualifying about 2.5 minutes remaining here, Burkhardt on top. It's Beans Forster who runs in second right now. We've got Beans on board here. Love the watch, or looking at his sim rig here. He's got the triple screen setup, so he's got some peripheral vision. That 23 is looking pretty quick.
Yeah, he is, and this entire qualifying session, once they got into some serious laps, this is the biggest separation we've seen between Morgan and Beans, 57 one-thousandths of a second. Early on, Beans was out front by 19 one-thousandths of a second. Then it was 45 one-thousandths of a second. So these guys are in absolute lockstep around here, doing a really, really nice job. And I love the new graphics package Beans has on that car.
It looks great. It's got some red, white, and blue on it, which is great for the holiday today, Greg. Of course, this being Memorial Day weekend, and a lot of patriotic events happening around the country. This is a great weekend for motorsports, of course, with the Indy 500, the Coca-Cola 600 happening now because of a rain delay from yesterday, as well as this event. We'll add this one to the list, and of course the Monaco Grand Prix that we were watching on Sunday. So qualifying continues. Skip Rock Jr. up into 6th place, and as far as the points go, we should point out Caleb Patry, who's 5th right now, not on the racetrack. He's currently leading the standings by a couple points over Morgan Burkhardt, so that's definitely notable as we approach the halfway point in our season.
Yeah, Morgan had somewhat of a troubled weekend at Summit Point. I mean, he put in some absolutely great drives last Monday night, but he had an issue and ended up buried in the pack, and then really had to come through it. Didn't get the lap he wanted qualifying, got caught in the melee, and it really hurt him a little bit. And Caleb was just on form and was really, really, driving beautifully. Nicholas Rice-Puto was really impressive last weekend as well. And the always feisty Giancarlo Schooler was up and in the mix as well. So it was a lot of fun. And we continue to see there the improvement and the speed out of Skip Rock Jr., which has always been fun to watch as well.
It'll be a fun race tonight, especially because with only 15 entrants, you can get pretty aggressive here. There's not a lot to lose if you step out of line. Of course, points are always a big deal, but as we approach the halfway point in the season, you have to look ahead towards the end of it and start planning out your attack the next couple of rounds as we make our way towards the next couple of events here, Greg. We've had some awesome racetracks so far, but up next after this is CTMP, then Sonoma, Long Beach, and Indianapolis Motor Speedway to round out the season, and next week in particular at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. That is a blast of a racetrack. I cannot wait for that one.
Well, I'll tell you what excites me about that one is, in essence, it's like you just dropped an oval into a very hilly area. Just let it fall. And so you get all of these corners, but they're all so fast with the exception of Moss. And I call it the Ontario Speed Bowl. It's, for a road course, it is just unbelievably quick and about as different as you can get from what we're racing on here. And that's what makes the Full Send Sims esports iRacing series and Spec Miata now in its second season so good, so exciting, is the fact that you get this massive mix of all of these great facilities that we get to run on. Want to give a big shout out to Court Schmidt, the owner and founder of Full Send Sims. Had a busy weekend at FARA in a FARA event down at Homestead this past weekend, and is a bit under the weather, and he's hanging in bed at home, but said he'll be watching. And Court, we want to say a big thanks as always for your vision in putting all of this together and making this happen. Big thanks as well to 3P Logistics, tailored trackside support, race car storage, maintenance, repair, and transportation, and Final Turn Motorsports, full service prep shop, trackside support, dyno tuning, and a Miata tranny builder as our presenting sponsors as well. So looks like we are getting set here, ready to go for our first race. And, it's just 2.25 miles long. So having a slightly smaller field than we've had previously, maybe not altogether a bad thing.
It might not be, and you're not going to have a lot of time to heat up your tires and or brakes either because this pace lap is short. We start this in Thunder Valley heading up towards turn number 10. Let's quickly roll through our starting grid here, Greg. It's not going to take us too long, thankfully. Morgan Burkhardt starts on that first row alongside Beans Forster in the number 23. Those two will be ones to watch.
Absolutely. Starting in third, the number 5 of Nicholas Rice-Puto, who has been on form this year. Jordan Rickson-Greeny also looking very stout on the 108.
And starting in fifth, it's Caleb Patry in the 998. Skip Brock Jr. starts in sixth. They're already rolling through the end of the carousel here, Greg. They're coming to the green. We do this on the front straight here, not the back stretch like we do in the real world. It is a quick green flag.
All right, here we go, and it's going to be Morgan Burkhardt, but look at the move by the number 5. That is Nicholas Rice-Puto. Big look, 3 wide down into turn 1. He's maybe going to make that work, but look at Beans floating great speed around the outside and has to get, no, he's still in there. He was fighting for position, gave Nicholas just a little bit of a nudge and said, I'm here, pal. Now, you heard Morgan Burkhardt say this is not a favorite passing area for him, but he had no problems plopping down inside his teammate, the number 5. I think he's going to exit in second. And in the back there was Nichols. Oh, it's Skip Brock running way wide.
That was a heck of a start. They'd wasted absolutely no time getting going. And now down the back straightaway, Forster trying to fight off Morgan Burkhardt, who looks to the left into the braking zone for turn number 4. Over 110 miles an hour here into turn 4, Greg.
And poor Beans, he's got a freight train with him. And here's what I said, you can make that outside pass work if you've got the skills and if you've got the bravado to do it. But look at Beans saying, yeah, you want to be outside? How about I take the outside up and over the hill? Look at the grin on Bean's face as he's dueling side by side here and gets the better of Morgan Burkhardt, last year's champion in that exchange. That's why they call that section madness, Kyle.
Well, you definitely don't need 30 cars to keep it entertaining here tonight in the FSS Esports Spec Miata Series. They are absolutely on it. Forster now through Thunder Valley. He's got Burkhardt tucked right up behind the rear bumper. Then it's Rice-Puto, Patry, Rickson-Greeny in the blue car. Again, the lone blue entrant here in a field of red as they head into the carousel for the first time. Another kind of zone where you drift out a little bit wide and opens up the opportunity for someone to jam the car down the inside. They didn't do that this time, and Skip Brock Jr., the bad luck continues here on this opening lap.
Oh man, he has had such a great start to the season, and now it's like last year's, as you said, bad luck starting to come in. Looks like he might have some damage to that left front corner, and Burkhardt has snuck around in turn 1, gone to the front, and gotten in front of Beans Forster. Rice-Puto now looking each way and that, and then Patry trying to figure out which way to go as well. But now into turn 2, and boy, I'll tell you what, that is a tough way to get around that corner for Caleb Patry, and you can see a nice move there by Rickson-Greeny trying to get back into that 4th spot.
Yeah, that was a great move there by Burkhardt down into turn number 1. Made it work in a corner where you're not really slowing down all that much in these cars. Really just a lift, maybe a touch on the brakes to get the car to rotate. But made that pass and took the lead away from Forster, as now Rixengrini deals with Giancarlo Schooler, who tried to tuck up underneath him, but Rixengrini stuck tight right through turn number 4, now up over Madness. Well, we've got a moment. Let's go back and see what happened to Skip Brock Jr. a little while ago. I think he might have just gotten wide leaving turn number 10, Greg. Just he dropped the right sides right there, drops the right rear.
That's what I'm saying. That's that turn 11 exit. It's a blind approach into 11. You climb, and right at the apex, it flattens out. And if you turn in a little early, that is exactly what happens. So that's a tough one for him to have to deal with here. But back up front, this amazing battle. And the guy sitting in 6th, Giancarlo Schooler, he is one of those guys that he gets feisty early in these races. And we'll see what he's going to be able to do. He's really he's got Rixengrini in his window here. And well, I'll tell you, he's got a real serious face on here. Normally, he's got a little bit of a grin going while he's running here. He's serious about this one.
Yeah, real stoic today. We jumped on board with him a couple of weeks ago and was grinning from ear to ear, running 6th right now. The grin is not there. I think he's traded with Beans today. Beans was the more stoic one. I think it was back at Road America when we were watching those two drivers last, and into the keyhole once more. Burkhardt now has the advantage, and as soon as Burkhardt got to the lead, it seems like the reaction kind of died down a little bit. It's not quite as volatile as it was a moment ago.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think everybody at this point now, and I think part of it is the minute that you see Morgan get to the lead, I think everybody at that point goes, uh-oh, we have got to just not mess around here. Beans, though, saying, I got a nice run. I'm going to give it a go here. Down to the inside. Is Morgan going to be able to come back? He does. But once again, we know Beans likes this outside move. Is he still there? No. Morgan was able to carry enough speed through there, Kyle, that he got the nose ahead before they got to the turn-in at the bottom of Madness in turn 6. That was well driven by Morgan.
Yeah, and back here for about 5th place, Giancarlo Schooler and Rixengrini were arguing over a position. They slid backwards a couple seconds behind Caleb Patry now as they tussle for P5. Gianni Morrow and Murphy Nichols are back here as well. Morrow in the black and red, Nichols in the orange and white. And then Andrew Ozencroft rounds out this 9-car battle here for position. But with Burkhardt still out front, Forster has not relinquished the pace this week. He is on it and keeping Morgan honest this week. It's going to be a battle all the way through. Again, like we said, 25-minute races, but the first 6 minutes are anything to go by. We're going to see a lot more position swapping in the next few.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question of that. And you pointed out that little battle between Rixengrini and Schooler, just getting that pass done. And even though Beans made that move into the inside down at the end of the back straight into Madness, they still flowed a lot of speed and momentum in that side-by-side. And that little bit of battling between Schooler and Rixengrini, look at the gap that just immediately appears there, a little bit over a second. So what they've got to do here, and they're hoping that Mario will join them and Nichols maybe, and just get together as a group, try and run that lead quartet down.
And the draft is stronger than it was last season. They've made some setup adjustments to make these cars a little bit more nimble and draft a little better as well. But as we watch them roll through turns 4 and 5, they still do body roll a lot, so you're still carrying a little more weight than this car would have normally. But how you use that weight to make the car move around. You see Morgan a little bit behind in the steering there, but still flowed pretty nicely over the crest at Madness. But Forster looking a little bit better through that section and reels Burkhardt in just a smidge.
Well, remember, in the open, I mentioned that this track also has some really quirky grip scenarios here. And, there are spots where it's really easy on tires. There are Rixengrini absolutely crossed up. That was a mega save. Watch him right here. That's over that tricky turn 9.
Watch those hands moving around as well. There's also been a little bit more trouble deeper in the field. Wayne Buttermore has found his way off course and back into pit lane. Wonder exactly what had happened here. He was already slow. I wonder if there was more to it.
You think he did the old miss the shift thing?
I think he was just he was in 5th gear here. I see a red light up on the dash there on the left. Can't read the text there, but red light's probably not great.
Is he out of fuel?
I couldn't imagine.
I saw fuel and then 0.0.
Huh.
I don't know.
Perhaps.
On the dash, yeah. That would be a unique thing here. And look at this now. The number 11, Morrow and Wozencroft going after it here. Wozencroft working that outside line. Does Andrew make it work through the keyhole? He might have.
Murphy Nichols in the 55 there, Wozencroft right behind, but now a little bit of a drag race towards turn number 4. Morrow's going to tuck in behind.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Sorry.
They're running close together. Wozencroft's right there, but Murphy in a different livery than I think he normally runs as well, which is got the fourth dimension 1 center on the car.
Yeah, that is a little new.
Typically, we see him in the Smoketown Brewing Company, which you can see that logo on the rear trunk lid. Usually, he's running usually running a red and black and white car, so that makes it a little bit different to distinguish.
You know, just watching where we were there, when they come out of the top of 5, since this is set a little bit, can we get a replay of what this group just going down through madness once again and get that tails away shot coming out of 5? Because this is where it really shows just the agility of these Mazdas and why they work here. Look at this, all the way out, cut all the way over, and still get that thing turned in and rotated. You cover a little bit more ground, but you get, in these cars, you roll so much more speed by opening up every one of those apexes. That's why these cars are just so awesome around this track. And speaking of awesome around this track, Morgan Burkhardt has made a little bit of a break here on Beans Forster and Nicholas Rice-Puto et al.
Yeah, 0.6 of a second is the advantage. That's a great point because that's a turn 5 to 6, that transition. In most cars, you don't use all the racetrack there. You kind of keep it tight to prioritize the exit at turn 6 in the run up the S's towards turn 9. But here in these cars, you've got enough agility to go all the way from the right all the way back to the left and not lose a ton of speed like you would in a faster GT car perhaps. So different lines being run here, and that's good knowledge here being used by these drivers to drive these things a little bit differently and play to their strengths a bit more. But Burkhardt's lead down a little bit as they use that draft to bring him back into sight here into turn 4 and 5, and Rice-Puto in the 5 car is hounding Forster for second.
Yeah, he's really been on here this season. And the other guy now that I think it's going to be fascinating to see is Giancarlo Schooler has made the break from Rickson Greeny. He's about 2 seconds clear, but he's a 1.5 seconds back now of Patry, and it's going to be really interesting to see if he's going to be able to by himself. We've seen Skip Brock do it earlier this season. It's possible. Will he be able to close that down and make this a 5-car train? I mean, as the season has gone on, we've come to quickly realize that Giancarlo Schooler is one of that lead group capable drivers for sure.
Last time by ran a 1:42.527, which was a little bit slower than the group ahead of him, but not by much. Let's see what it is this time by. Morgan ran a 1:42.4 and a 1:42.7 for Schooler, so not quite clinging to that front pack, but there's still a long way to go. We're only 10 minutes in to this 25-minute race. This is only one of 2 that we have tonight.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you see those little moments like Patry dropping those tires and the like. That's the kind of thing that could just steal a little bit of that momentum here and bring Giancarlo back into it. And I'll tell you what now, Beans, Rice-Puto, and Patry, they are working so hard not to let Morgan make that break, and they pulled a little bit of that back. It's now down to under 0.5 seconds, Kyle.
Yeah, and again, teammates all working together here in the top 4 with the exception of Beans Forster. All those Delta Sport cars swapping positions here, so that's something to consider as well, that there might be a little bit of everyone against Forster, so he's kind of the one-man show here in this mix, but he's doing a great job, and it does look like he's the second fastest car, and there's some lap traffic. I think that's Wayne Buttermore up the road. Will that cause Morgan to just lift the throttle for a brief moment, and that would do away with pretty much all that 0.5 second gap?
Yeah, absolutely right. And it all comes down to where are they going to catch him here, because obviously, you know, a Buttermore, if he knows they're coming and he can, you know, let them through cleanly, he will. But there are spots on this track where, you know, the guy you're trying to pass can't just hit the disappear button. And wow, how close was that by Burkhardt, cutting the margins there in the approach to turn number 11. That's that run through Thunder Valley. And one of the reasons it's called that is because you get that close to that guardrail and the sound bounces around down there big time. Wow, was that tight.
That is wild how close he got to the wall. Watch this far right, almost shaving the mirror off that car through there. And I've seen some pretty close calls there, but that's about as close as I think you can get to it without running into that wall. But still 0.5 second advantage. It's working using all the racetrack, and that'll find you an advantage in a momentum car like this.
I was going to say that was a clinic in opening the angle up through the corner, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow. All right, now he's going to actually maybe be able to get a little toe here. Now he's going to pull out and go, and I don't know that Beans is close enough to Buttermore to get much of a toe at this stage. Beans just going to have to go down the inside and follow Burkhardt. And now they got a car between them. That's tough right now. Going into madness, Beans is right now, I'm sure he's beside himself.
Oh, took a look up the inside there as well. He's going to be side by side. And now Buttermore has to touch the brakes and let Forster on by. But now Patry will get put on the outside. This is just a tough scenario for everyone here.
Yeah, and now you can see Buttermore realize there's a pack coming. I'm just going to get out of the way. But like I said, that was one of those spots here where there's just no disappear button to hit. And you just got to drive your lines, and you just can't worry about it. And it obviously it affected things. And
trouble for Giancarlo Schooler in the 111. He has had a problem at turn 9.
That's that tricky turn 9, but it looks like his maybe came on the run through before he got into 9. There's that rise there.
Probably touches the grass.
Yep. Just ran a little wide. Easy to do there, so easy, because again, you're trying to open that up and late apex it just a little bit so that you're at least marginally straightened out when you go over that sudden brow at turn 9, and you just get a little too wide on that turn end, and that's what can happen.
That's an easy place as well. It's a pretty blind corner to enter.
Yeah.
And these cars, you have a little bit more time to react, but in faster GT cars, if you get that line wrong coming over that crest, not a lot of opportunity to correct it. And if you kind of panic steer, then you're just going to understeer yourself off track anyway. I've seen that catch a lot of drivers off guard.
Yeah. And that's where, if you've never been to this track, folks that are watching here, try and go. IMSA doesn't race there anymore, but I think IndyCar still does. And watching cars around this track that have a lot of downforce is just it. If you've got an eye, you can see the laws of nature's being broken. That's the best way to put it, because you can see when a car in IndyCar goes up and over, say that sudden rise in turn 7, and you can see every bit of that car wanting to rebound up into the air, and then the arrow just squashes it down onto the ground. It's just incredible.
Look at Morgan three-wheeling there from watch the
two-wheeling.
wheel. Leaving the right rear tire. Oh, wow. Two-wheeling.
Front's off the ground too, baby.
Just with mechanical grip. Then he gets up on the curb, but that was an awesome moment there.
Yep.
These cars are gripped up.
As the Brits would say, he's giving it some welly.
Yes. He's got the right sides in the grass on the approach to turn 1 as well. He's really using all the racetrack, even on the pit exit curb there at turn 1. He hasn't been shy about getting 2 tires up on that. That's fair game here at iRacing, and the cut course penalty is actually on the inside edge of that curb. So you can really, you can actually put 2 tires to the inside of it and still be in legal bounds here at iRacing. So in the cars that are capable of taking that much curb, it's not unusual to see them getting left side tires up and kind of using it like a slower road course where you're kind of hooking the car around the corner with that race curbing.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was many years ago, I stopped there because a team was doing some testing the next day, and I got there a day early with my daughter, and the Mid-Ohio Road Racing School was unfolding. And at the end of the day, Calvin Fish, Brian Till, and some of the instructors were given some rides, and they put Brittany and I, my daughter and I, each in a different car, and their line through that was behind that curb. And man, could you roll a lot more speed doing that.
It's such a fun corner because you can, here in iRacing especially, you can take as much of that curb as you're willing to handle without getting yourself a cut course penalty. This is a battle for 7th. Gianni Morrow and Andrew Wozencroft in that number 80 battling over the crest here at turn number 9, and a good little scrap for position here. Points on the line as far down as 20th place, so you might as well
get after it. And they've been in very close concert for the duration of this race. Nichols has been able to get away from them just a little bit, but these two, they've been scrapping since the green flag.
And the 11's a little behind in the steering, and Just like, actually, I noticed this at Circuit of the Americas a couple weeks ago as well. These back and forth complexes, it's fascinating because one little mistake, you're going to carry that for the next couple of corners. It's really difficult to get yourself out of these slalom sequences. Once you make a mistake, you're going to carry it through the next couple of corners. It's very hard to readjust. We saw that there. Maurer just a little bit behind in the steering, and Wozencroft closes up.
Well, and somebody put it really well once. They said the corners are connected. And obviously they are. They're paved together and everything. But what they meant was rhythmically. And you heard Morgan in that lap say, and from here all the way to the exit at 9, it's all rhythm. And if you get just that little bit behind in that rhythm, you're just chasing the car. Similar to the S's at Coda. If you get behind early there, and you try and just maintain your speed and drive through it, you just go slower and slower, and you're scrubbing more and more. Your angles are all wrong, and it's sort of contradictory to a race car driver to say, look, just slow down, get back in line. But sometimes in these things, that's exactly what you have to do, because you'll lose less time by intentionally slowing down a little bit than trying to fight through being behind in that rhythm, like you said.
Yeah, and I know they're. Certainly Circuit of the Americas doesn't hold the same candle to tracks like Mid-Ohio or Watkins Glen, but I've learned and gained some appreciation for that place and the way it's designed just from watching cars move through those S's. They're based off of the Silverstone, Maggots, and Beckett section, but they have some elevation as well, and I've learned to really appreciate that track. But from a competition standpoint, it's a lot of fun to watch, but doesn't have the same allure as a track like Mid-Ohio, so this has got the old-fashioned back and forth that we've come to know and love. And with about 6 minutes left in this race, Morgan Burkhardt has been the best to tame it today so far, 1.5 seconds clear of Forster. Then it's half a second back to Patry as we watch still the closest battle on the track between Morrow and Wozencroft.
Yeah, these guys, and look who's coming in the background there, Schooler. And looking at the times, his last lap was a 44.1, and that's about a second, a little bit more quicker than the guys in front of him. So 5.5 minutes, we'll see what he's going to be able to do. He is really throwing down some laps right now. But there's that little smile again. Back in rhythm, having a good time. I'll tell you, the guy who's impressing me here is the number 55 of Murphy Nichols, because he has latched onto the back of Rick Segrini, and for a lot of this, I think he made one little bobble there, but he was within a couple of car lengths of Rick Segrini for laps, and it stuck right with him. So nice job. He's fighting with Rick Segrini for a top 5, so kudos to Murphy. And
his best lap is over half a second faster than Jordan Rick Segrini, so if he can stitch a couple together, he could put some pressure on for a top 5 spot. And you're going to start where you finished for race number 2, so if he can start in row 3, that's a great spot. We saw a couple drivers fight for positions immediately after the green flag from that 3rd row. Here's Forster and Patry now going at it for 2nd place, and this is far from over here.
Yeah, this is still a great duel here. They've been able to drop Rice Puto just a little bit here, and so this battle at this stage, and here we go. Patry closing in, looks to the inside. Beans left that little bit of an opening, and Patry was darn near able to sneak up inside. And remember, at this stage, Patry is your points leader, and I think it's by a rather scant amount. Just to confirm that, yeah, he's by 5 points clear of Morgan Burkhardt. And so right now, Patry is thinking, I can't. If I can finish 2nd, it's going to be a lot better in terms of points than 3rd right now.
Anything that you can do to increase the distance on Morgan Burkhardt when you have an advantage on him in this series, you're going to do it. And that means getting aggressive here. Just don't draw yourself a penalty while you're doing it from making contact, but a great run here. Forster doesn't go defensive, late on the brakes into turn 4 for Patry. He's got it, but Forster crosses over.
Yeah, and Beans knows he has this outside line pretty dialed here, and I think Beans knew. Ooh, touch there. Side by side, I don't think it's going to really hurt either of them. But Beans drifts a little wide, and I think that's because he got behind on his rhythm because of that touch. And that's going to have Patry now down the inside, and here comes Rice Puto down to the inside of Forster as well, side by side over 9. That is tough to execute cleanly, and after a touch between Patry and Beans, Beans and Rice Puto did that very nicely. And look at Beans still grinning there going, well, it's just good racing.
Someone lit the match in that group for a second. They were absolutely on it. Patry is through, and I think that was just a result of 2 drivers that were coming over the crest and just taking two different lines and thinking that the other was going to run the same one, and they just didn't. And they had a good old door slam moment there. I don't think intentional by either, but just miscalculations as we hit now what should be 2 laps to go, and Morrow's around at turn 10, or 11 rather.
Oh, what a shame. Was up there in that top 10 group, and there you go. That's that exit of 11. It's so easy to do there, Kyle.
Same thing we saw happen to Skip Brock Jr., same exact way, actually.
Yeah.
And he will drop down to 10th place. As speaking of Skip Brock Jr., by the way, he's recovered to 13th as he goes down a lap to leader Morgan Burkhardt. And Morgan's driven away as the battle for second got hot, and they have effectively given up on trying to run him down and now have begun their scrap for P2.
Yeah, that's done. Now it's all about 3 for 2, and that's 3 cars for the last 2 spots on the podium here. And you know Beans wants this back bad after having led some and run in second most of it. Look at that look of determination on his face, working through here. And the problem for him is, he can't do anything, open up an angle to try and get a run, because Rice Budo will just fill that gap in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I've noticed he's fighting understeer on corner exit a little bit. I'm not sure if he's committing to throttle just a hair too soon, but I've seen him dragging the front tires a little bit at the exit of the corners, just trying to get a better run onto the straightaway. But I think the reality is you have to build that run a little earlier in the corner and maybe back up the entry just a touch, but then you're at the whim of whoever's behind you trying to sneak up the inside.
Yeah, exactly. Like right there in the entrance to the carousel, normally he would have maybe wanted to swing out as the white flag comes out a little bit wider to straighten that run out to get a run, but he couldn't, because Rice Budo right there would have just come steaming up the inside and would have been nasty for everybody here. But Beans is there. He is ready, and if he can stay put, he's got to he's not going to be able to do anything, I don't think, into the keyhole, but if he drives a really good exit here, he's going to be well placed to try and do something heading down into madness.
Well, he's got a pretty good run here. He's close enough that the slipstream will help him by, and now he has to set up the pass. Which side do you choose here, Greg? This is just like Road Atlanta. Which line do you go with, right or left?
Well, it's all going to depend on what Patri's going to do up in front, right? And Patry defends to the middle of the track, and so Beans now is going to make that outside attempt. Doesn't carry a lot of speed through there. Patry gets that curb and unsettled the car, and I think Beans thought he might lose it and had to get out of it. And now Beans has to be, wow, I really thought Rice Budo may have just stuffed it down the inside there, because he had that momentum going. But now it is into this last sequence of corners. Tough passing in this area of the track all the way to the finish line.
There was a little touch into turn 5, nose to tail between Patry and Forster, but you see him grinning. They're just having so much fun racing, Greg. It's not even for the lead. Burkhardt's well clear of that, but the battle for second's still on.
Oh, it's fierce. Here's that tricky turn 11. Get it right. Everybody looks good there. And here's what I said. Ooh, I think Beans just tapped him a little bit. And look what Rice Budo's doing. He really wanted to square that corner up to get a drive, but he floated too wide. So Burkhardt comes through, gets another win. Patry's second, and fighting Forrester doing an absolutely great job. Wow, was that fun.
That was a blast. And you know what's cool about that is Forster ended up losing a position and all of that, but he was smiling the entire time. That is the way that the Full Send Sim Spec Miata series wants to race, and that was awesome stuff. I'm sure they're going to get to do it all over again here in just a moment. Here's a quick look at the results from race number 1. Burkhardt wins it by 4.6 seconds, but all the excitement was for P2 there in the closing moments.
Oh, it was incredible. Forrester was there for much of it. Then Caleb Patry made that really, really nice pass that Beans tried to come back at him. We had a number of times they were side by side. Nicholas Rice Budo just sat there waiting for any kind of an opening. Just never appeared. And, we saw Jordan Rixagrini pretty crossed up a couple of times, and he still came back for a top 5 finish.
Great stuff. Murphy Nichols will roll off 6th in race number 2. Wozencroft, Giancarlo Schooler, Trace Hance. We didn't really talk a lot about Trace, but a top 10 for the number 53. And Gianni Morrow, rebounding from that late incident, ends up in 10th. Here's a look at the rest of the order. Didn't see a lot of the Bankin Williams or even Skip Brock with that early collision he had at turn number 11. And he's hoping for a better run here in race number 2.
Yeah, and he's got his work cut out starting that far back now outside of that top 10. But we've seen him make those drives through the field before, so we certainly know he's capable of it. Hey, I want to just remind everybody that the next school for the Full Send Sim series here will be this Thursday at 7 p.m., and that is a literal driving school. You just check out fullsendsims.com and sign up for it, and it's an actual school that you could do on your sim, and it is for Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Kyle and I were talking about just how fierce that place is, and it is. There are so many drivers that say every other track I'm fine with. My gut tightens when I think about Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, because it is so fast and so unforgiving. And that will be this Thursday, 7 p.m. For Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. And remember, you can also sign up and get one-on-one instruction as well. The instructors include Morgan Burkhardt, Beans, Forrester, we just saw drive that great race, Konrad Chachik. They're all official Full Send Sims racing instructors. Go to fullsendsims.com. You can sign up for one-on-one instruction, and seriously take a look at that school, particularly if you've never driven or even seen Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. It's a place kind of unto itself, and you don't want to mess with that. Quick reminder as well, Kyle, that is always the top 3 in this season of Spec Miata will receive trophies, and the P1 will receive a direct drive wheelbase, P2 will get a set of load cell pedals, and P3 will achieve a choice of either an H-pattern sequential shifter or a 2-year iRacing paid subscription. But here's the thing, if you win one of those hardware bits in a season, in a calendar year, you can't win another one in a calendar year. So if you're won one in season 1, you finish second in season 2, you're kind of moved out of that equation. You'll get your trophy, but then everybody moves up a spot. So if somebody's running 4th or 5th in the points, don't give up, because you can still end up with one of those great bits of hardware here. And again, as always, huge thank you to 3P Logistics. Frank Rodriguez, the owner of that, is such a supporter of racing in general and has become a huge supporter of the Full Send Sim series. And so has Rob Greenwood and his Final Turn Motorsports company just do an incredible job as well. And we're so lucky to have them as presenting sponsors here. And again, a huge shout out to Court Schmidt and Full Send Sims and Pops. That's his dad, who does a lot of the work with Court on the road and the like. Both of them just absolutely top-tier people, and they make an unbelievable product in those Full Send Sims. So what are you thinking there, Kyle? What are you thinking about this next race?
Oh, I can't wait. And again, you can't do it without the partners and people that make it happen. And it's so cool that iRacing and racing here, it simulates not only the action, but also the business model behind it. It requires partners and people to make it all run smooth, and Full Send Sims, and they put on a really good show here with the partners, 3P Logistics and Final Turn Motorsports. So really happy to be here joining you. And before we get back to green here, Greg, tomorrow and Wednesday are the build days for iRacing, which means we get some new toys this week. Unfortunately, I won't be able to really get my hands on them because I'll be at a Grid Life event all week. But when we return next Monday, again, we will be continuing with our event at CTMP. But the build updates also usually bring a bunch of physics adjustments and visual enhancements. And I don't think CTMP is on the list to get some of these new things, but they have redone all the foliage, as well as added 3D grass and a whole bunch of other things that are coming. Cool. As well as Willow Springs Raceway. Big Willow's coming to iRacing this week. So really exciting build week. The Ligier LMP3 car is on its way this Wednesday as well. So entry-level prototypes. I
just saw that stuff racing at Homestead in the FAR event. They had one running there.
There you go. We can.
So they are a great car, that's for sure.
And there's more. I mean, as far as what else is on the list of things to come, I couldn't even tell you. I know that the Toyota GR Supra GT4 Evo is supposed to come at some point as well. We haven't. Really
Well, of course you'd know that.
Well, but they haven't told us when that's coming. But I know that it is. And there are some other things. There's always some surprises in the build. My favorite things are often the little changes. It might seem like small things, but just the addition of marbles and the way the track rubbered in, all those things were relatively small in the grand scheme of things, but they add up to make the simulation feel a lot more alive. So I can't wait.
And all those little things are the things that can really affect a race as it unfolds, and that's I think that's really cool to see that happening. You and I were talking before the race started this evening here about with Willow Springs coming in. If only iRacing had a Ford GT40 Mark II, everybody could pretend to be one of those legendary drivers in Ford versus Ferrari. Hey, real quick, just a little bit of trivia. Can you go back to that shot that we had, that high shot of that show? There you go. Just in case you're wondering why every building at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course to this day has a red roof, it is because in the early 80s, a guy named Jim Truman, who of course fielded Indy cars and was an absolute player, was the founder of Red Roof Inns. And he bought this place, and from that moment on, every building had a red roof, and even though he passed away a number of years ago, that tradition continues. So just a fun little bit of trivia for you about why all the roofs are red.
I love that. I love that tidbit, because it's not even something you normally even think about unless you knew that fact behind the scenes, but really interesting piece of Mid-Ohio history. I also love this place from a spectator standpoint, because you can get in and out of the track so easily and so accessibly from the paddock to the infield, and then really your primary viewing opportunity is over the crest at Madness. And I'm not sure if we can see it here, but there's just a great spectator spot basically right behind where this camera is. It's just an excellent place to watch. But the virtual fans are going to get ready to go racing here again momentarily, Greg, because we are pacing, if only for 2 corners, before we turn them loose for another 25 minutes.
All right, this is going to be interesting here, because we've got those teammates up front, and they're the 2 guys duking it out in the points right now. Here we go. Morgan Burkhardt to your right. Green flag flies. We're racing at Mid-Ohio. And it looked like Caleb Patry got a much better jump. And see if he's able to just stream through. He does. That was an absolutely great start. Nicholas Rice-Puto might be going right with him around the outside here of Morgan Burkhardt. He did. And Morgan is now back in third. And believe me, that's what most everybody in this field wanted to see happen. Morgan Burkhardt not lead. Oh, late lunge there by Rick Segrini, but he thought better of it.
That was wild into turn number 2. Beans Forster on the outside. He's down to 5th place. Murphy Nichols up 2 spots into 4th. Where did he come from? Row 3 now up into the top 5 here as they head down the back straightaway. Patry again trying to pad the points lead, but who knows where it is now after he finished in second in race 1 with Burkhardt on top. So he would love to finish ahead of Burkhardt to make sure that he leads here heading into round 5 with that points advantage. Who knows where it's at as they head into 5.
Yeah, it's going to be scant either way, whoever leaves here with the lead. It's not going to be my bunch, and the number 80 getting a big shove. Wozencroft there. I think that was Skip Brock, who, of course, we know is trying urgently to come up through the pack. And I'm not saying that Skip intentionally shoved him. That's just how it ended up in that corner. And so that was a tough one. Here's a look back at the number 53 at Trace Hansen. Love that graphics on the car. Very evocative.
Yeah, it looks great. And this has been a night to forget for Skip Brock Jr. between the accident on lap 1 in the first race and then contact in race number 2. Murphy Nichols is off course.
Oh, hey, guess where?
Turn 10.
The turn 10 up through the exit of 11. And this time he just went way off. Yeah, he got loose on the exit, or on the entry, I should say, and then the correction just speared him off. So, but he'd been sticking with those guys up front. And for Beans Forster, that's something that he's going to be very happy for, because you know that he was not going to make that easy for Beans to get around him. And now Beans with Giancarlo Schooler, who's had a great opening couple laps coming up from buried in the pack here. Those guys are now in a position to close it up.
Yeah, and the concern now is those front 3 teammates are now beginning to put some distance on Beans Forster. And they've got the opportunity to work together and maybe make that chase a little harder. But Patry leads over Rice-Puto, over Morgan Burkhardt. I don't think they're going to want to finish in the order that they're currently in. We should also note the clouds have come over the racetrack here, Greg. That's going to cool the surface down and maybe make it a little grippier.
Absolutely, and this is one of those tracks that is really sensitive to temperature change. So, yeah, I think you could, these guys could suddenly be finding that grip come up, and the guys that have that natural little sensation that even in a sim, where they can say, "Ooh, that stuck better than it did in that first race," they'll really be able to optimize that and go here. And we'll see how that plays out here. But, I mean, right now, if Forster, Schooler, and Rick Segrini can find just that little bit here, we got a 6-car battle for the lead.
It's 3 drivers out front right now, though. Patry, Rice-Puto, and Burkhardt. Rice-Puto got very close to that curb that we've seen claim a couple of cars tonight, and then into the carousel, which no matter how many times I drive this in a sim, Greg, and how many times I've ridden around here in real life, it just feels awkward. That turn in there, you have to slow the car down and turn. And cars don't want to do all those things with the front tires all at once, especially if you're in a front-wheel drive car. Those tires are always overloaded doing something else, and to try to balance that grip between slowing down and turning is a huge challenge here.
It's very tricky, and part of it is as we were talking about, the carousel, when you look at it at first, it looks like all right, it's basically flat, but it's not. That's one of those sections of track where Tom O'Gorman's phrase, it isn't elevation, it's texture. And right when you want to start doing some of what you're talking about, there's a little rise that it flattens out, and you've got to get that timing right to make that work, and you have to be careful not to float out too wide, which is the quick way, as we have Burkhardt now taking a look at Rice-Puto down to the inside, and he is through. Well played. But that little exchange, look who's joined the back of that pack. There is Beans Forster right in the mix now.
Yeah, nice clean move there by Burkhardt, but the expense was a couple tenths of a second, which is all Beans needed to close that gap up here. And he's definitely willing to break up the Delta Sport party up at the front. We'll see how far he can climb. I think he's got an opportunity to muck this up a little bit for Morgan before Morgan gets to the lead, but we see what happens every time that 40 gets out in front. He just drives away. So I think it's up to Forster to get up there and disrupt this group before that 40 car clears Caleb Patry.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you what, I think Caleb's mission right now is going to be a little different than it has been in the past, where these two guys would want to work together and break away. And at this stage, I think that, and he might let Morgan go, thinking, all right, he'll go, I'll go, we'll both change leads and we'll drive away here. But with that slight lead in the points, I think Caleb might be just a little bit more defensive on Burkhardt, make it a little bit tougher for him to make that move, thinking about those points as we're now essentially completing the first half of the season. And I think that might bring the rest of these guys into it. Then we could just have an absolute free-for-all those last 5 minutes.
Under 20 minutes to go now, and things are beginning to look a little spicier up towards the front. One of the other things that is not necessarily coming this build, but we're told by the end of the year, which could be the September build, is rain. And Greg, oh man, Mid-Ohio in the rain. You cannot think of a slicker racing surface. And that big bobble there by the 998 of Patry, who's already struggling on the brakes. But I cannot wait to drive Mid-Ohio in the rain here in iRacing, because if the simulation is accurate, you won't be able to get very far.
Oh, absolutely right. I mean, Moto America, this is a track that every Moto America rider absolutely loves. And they quit coming here because it was a crash fest every time it rained. And they said, the odds are you're in the Midwest, you could get rain over the weekend. And they said, we just can't do it anymore. And every race we watch here, whether it's in person or we're working and announcing or whatever, the minute it rains, it becomes an ice skating rink. And so, this place is it's a tricky place in the dry. It's downright diabolical in the wet.
Rivers running across the back straightaway and leaving turn 6. You have to be really experienced to make it through a lap here, especially if you don't have wet weather tires and you're just on street tires or something. Patry leads the way, though, but not by much. A tenth and a half of a second. Rice-Puto is there, and one car goes off in the background. That's Giancarlo Schooler. And interesting to note that the cones didn't go flying. They must have made those not contactable cones, because I recall knocking those things all over the place in the past. But I think iRacers probably got tired of dodging those things, so invisible they went.
So you're saying they made the Kyle Heyer fix?
Yeah, yes. Well, I think what would happen is they would hit them so hard they'd sail across the track into the path of other cars and on the back straightaway. And those cones, when they are contactable, they can cause damage, and they can even get stuck under cars and get dragged, which I've seen happen, and it will slow you down, and they are frustrating. I believe that. Especially when they're that close to the ring.
Beans.
Whoa!
He saw that little opening there as Rice-Puto was running a little wide, and Beans decided to let him know he was there. And just in case Rice-Puto might have overreacted a little bit. That was a nice move by Beans just because had Rice Pudo just said, oh my goodness, and moved a little bit too suddenly and opened the wheel up, Beans could have scooted through. So it didn't really cost them any momentum, but it was an opportunity that should you force that other guy just into a little bit of a slight overreaction, you might have been able to sneak through. So that just tells you these guys are up on it here right now.
That was a wake-up call for Rice Pudo, if nothing else.
Yeah, it was.
Hi, Beans Forster's here, and he wants the third place. He wants to jump up onto that bottom step on the podium. And they've got places to go because Burkhardt and Patry are beginning to eke out a slight gap there. It's not much, but to get big, that gap has to start small, and it's small right now.
Exactly. It has to go start somewhere here. And again, behind them, Schooler and Rick Segrini, the 111, the red car, and the blue 108 are running laps. Schooler's last lap was quicker than both Rice Pudo and Forster. So they've got some pace here. And we've got a good little scrap going a little bit farther back. And look at the drive Trace Hans has put in here. Worked his way up now into 7th. And Brock has had a nice comeback drive, hasn't he?
Yeah, back up into 9th place. We saw Gianni Morrow go for quite the ride at the exit of turn number 1. And for the lead, Greg, here comes Morgan Burkhardt.
Yep, he just got a great run out. Now, are we going to see the outside move? Nope. Caleb Patry decides he's going to try and square up, maybe try and make the outside move here, and Morgan covers that beautifully. And down the hill we go, bottom of madness, and Morgan Burkhardt is in the lead. Now, does he pull a Burkhardt here and open that margin up just minimally but consistently every lap?
We haven't seen anyone go defensive into turn 4. And while I thought that was interesting for a moment, that hey, why are they just letting them drive by? I think the reason is because I'm not sure it's clear that you want the driver's right going into turn 4. I think you want to be on the left in some instances. So they're staying on the left, hoping that they can maintain overlap, but Morgan's just that much better on the brakes that he's already clear of them by the time they head into that left-hander at the top of the hill. So I think that's why they're not going defensive, but it's allowing Morgan to get by regardless.
I think you're right. And, you know, what makes that work, that outside move work there, one, there's a little bit of banking in that corner, actually. And so there is some grip around the outside. But the other part of it is it's not so much that you're just ramping the outside with so much more speed than your competitor by itself. It's that if you make that work and you stuck around the outside, you've pinned your competitor to the inside. They cannot track out as much. That slows their line down and maybe gives you that little edge going in to the top of madness, and that's how that works. But as you said, if the guy that's making the pass gets clearly ahead of you at the apex, then it's probably not on.
Oh, Rocco Pasquarella, I just heard boom, and that is the engine on the 95.
Oh, I hate to hear that.
Yep.
I mean, literally and figuratively.
And down to second gear, just a little bit too long, hanging over the red line here of this MX-5, and up it went.
What a shame.
And, you know, that's something I've noticed in some of the newer cars here in the service, you know, the GT4 cars and even the LMP cars, all those new cars with the fancy, you know, paddle shifted or sequential shifted transmissions. A lot of them have electronic lockouts so that you can't over-rev the engine, but these are old-fashioned H-pattern gearboxes. If you go down a gear and you let that clutch out, or you shift into the wrong gear and let the clutch out, there's nothing preventing you from doing that. Other than your hand doing it. So if you get the car down and you're engine braking using the revs to slow the car down, you kind of want to shift at a point where you're really at the red line, but you miss that by just a little bit. These engines are not going to withstand that for too long.
Well, I look forward to getting all the letters, comments, and complaints, but these guys are doing real driving.
Yeah. I mean, 3 pedals in the footwell there, there's just something special about it. It gives the driver more tools, I think is the way that I always like to put it, because you've got, you know, all the transmissions in modern race cars are shifted manually, but with paddles or a sequential or something of the sort, you're mostly 2-pedal driving. Give the driver the clutch and then force them to heel toe the old-fashioned way, and all of a sudden you've got more tools in your toolbox than that fancy electronic transmission, and I just think that makes for a more entertaining battle when drivers are, they got all hands and feet doing all sorts of things.
Well, yeah, as we're watching Skip Rock, you know, he worked the inside, then the outside here on Morrow, and I think he's got to get it done this time. But, you know, to me, that was that's the ballet that was one of the things that hooked me on racing. That footwork, No, Morrow got in a little too deep, was going to make a surprise move, and just tinked into the back of Brock and sent Brock flying off track. That is, you see how big that area is? That's why they call that China Beach.
Yeah, just misjudged the braking zone there, Greg, and speared off. And thankfully the gravel did what the gravel should do and brought both those cars to a stop before they got to that wall.
And I think to Morrow's credit, he wouldn't have had to run into that beach at least that far. I think he just drove into it to get close to Skip, as if to say, I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah.
Clearly here. Now it's watching Bankin in the 00, that blue car with the blue flames with Hans right behind him. These guys have had a absolutely fabulous race throughout here. Wozencroft sticking right with them. But yeah, I just, you think heeling and towing and having to match revs and get the shift right and all that, that's what separated great drivers, of the magicians that can make that work. And it's gone absent now, and I miss it. I really do.
Yeah, especially when they're dealing with super high horsepower cars and very heavy clutches, and it was you really had to be on it and be athletically in the zone too to get all that stuff to work together.
You bet.
Now it's a little bit different, but either way, the 00 and 80, that's Wozencroft on the outside, driving up around the outside of Trace Hans into the keyhole, but offline, and 00 is going to loop the inside, and they should exit side by door.
Exactly, and right there you can see what I was talking about. This was at the exit of the carousel as opposed to 4, but Wozencroft with that outside line, Bankin could not exit all the way out to the track and roll the speed he would have wanted. He had to check up a little bit, and it just allowed Wozencroft to go right around the outside of him. And now, boy, attacking here down into turn 4, up into madness. Such a great piece of racetrack here. As you said, great viewing areas, big hillside there, and a big row of trees. You just get up with your cooler and your chairs in the shade line, and you're in for a glorious day.
I've only gotten to spectate one race in that area, and that was the Grid Life Touring Cup Fun Race on Sunday last year. And while it wasn't the full field, I could only imagine what 50 cars screaming down there would feel like. It's just such a neat angle to spectate from, and it's such a high action area as well. There's a lot of tracks where the majority of the grandstands are not in the high action areas, but you got to place yourself where all the passes and action happens. And here at Mid-Ohio, it seems to be turns 4, 5, and 6 really where things get dicey. Up front, under 10 minutes to go, Burkhardt leads, but he hasn't sprinted away. Patcher, Ispudo, and Forster still 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, they're sticking right with him here, and Schooler and Rick Segrini, they closed up to within about a second and a half of this group, and now they've faded a bit. And I think it's because they're in their own little battle, and they are going at that pretty hammer and tong as well. And they just have not been able to stick with this group here. And then we've got the Hans Wozencroft Bankin battle. We've got some good racing going on everywhere here. Here comes that Schooler Rick Segrini battle, and I mean they have just been in lockstep for laps as well. Nichols is the only guy really who's kind of out on his own right now.
No man's land for the 55, but you mentioned the couple of battles. 12 seconds behind him is where he can find Wozencroft and Bankin and Skip Brock Jr. and the rest of the group that is battling. And Wozencroft and Hans in particular have been in their dogfight now for a little longer, I think both of them would like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I was just taking a look at the scoring here, and Murphy Nichols, his last lap was a second quicker than Rick Segrini and Schooler. And if he can maintain that, he could end up, he's a long ways back, but boy, he's going after. Look at this slide. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Had the rear tires spinning and smoking in the Miata of all things. That's got to be pretty sideways to hang adrift in that car and at a speed that slow. But you see the front tires really pushing. He's trying to get all the mechanical grip he can out of it. There's not really any aero to speak of on these cars, so you're really relying entirely on the chassis and the tires to stick you to the road. And Greg, it is getting very interesting up front. Patry is right back to the bumper of Burkhardt, and could we see him go back by?
I think he certainly wants to. I think he's certainly capable of it. We have seen him on occasion out-duel Morgan. Doesn't happen often, but he's been able to do it. And the interesting thing here is going to be watching what does Morgan do. Does he protect in the middle, or does he go outside? He's going to the outside, and Patry had a run here. And opted not to do anything with it. And I think maybe Patry was looking back and saw they built a little bit of a gap over Puto and Forrester. And I think Patry would like to be in a situation, Kyle, when he attacks Morgan to not have to worry about guys behind him coming through, but pretty smartly, watch what happens here as these two guys just close right back up.
Yeah, he caught the grass there just a little bit,
yeah.
and as he turned back to the right, you load up that left side tire right there, touches the grass, see the quick correction back to the left, but just that little slip alone took him right out of that battle for the top spot, at least momentarily. Let's go back to Schooler and Rick Singrini trading spots for 5th.
Boy, they've been doing this for a while, and now it's Schooler. That is a difficult place to make a pass, and he hasn't made it yet. Because look at that drive by Rick Singrini. Just stayed put, drove the proper line through 11, gave him a little bit more speed, and Giancarlo Schooler just had to say, yeah, he not able to make it work there. So now we'll see if he just gets a toe, does something down, maybe into the keyhole.
Turned in really early. Used that curb there, kind of center punched it. And now the run up to keyhole, and didn't really build the run I thought he was going to get, maybe just as a result of that early turn in. He's certainly putting all the momentum forward he can, throwing his body into it here in the braking zone. Look at Rick Singrini, late on the brakes, maybe too late though.
Ooh, and Giancarlo was definitely rolling a bit more speed. That was a nice save by Giancarlo not to get into the back of Rick Singrini here. Look at this. Rick Singrini now protecting that. Now this is that kink, which is kind of nice because, you know, you might say, well, is he blocking? Well, no, he's turning into the kink. But now Rick Singrini moves a little bit, dissuades Schooler, maybe just enough. I'll tell you, Jordan Rick Singrini goes in really deep on the binders, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely leaning on the brakes a lot, and the challenge with that is that you can overheat those front tires by asking them to do too much too quickly, and that might be leaving him a bit more vulnerable to Schooler, but to his credit, Schooler is keeping him pushing and isn't really allowing him to back up a little bit.
Yeah, it's really, really close. And, boy, I'll tell you, it's snugging up right at the front again, too. With Burkhardt and Patry just looking at the scoring. But, boy, this battle's so fun. Sometimes you don't know where to go necessarily here.
Looks like Singrini wide again, but prioritizing the exit of the carousel.
Well, and that's what I was talking about. When you're far enough ahead where the guy's just not going to be able to stuff it up the inside, then through the carousel, you want to open that up a little bit, get the car rotated so you can get to power a little bit sooner, straighten out that run out of the carousel through that left flick at 13 and set sail. And he, that really played out well for him at that stage. And here we go.
Yeah, Patry's close enough now that I really do believe that if he can just get an equal exit to Burkhardt, he can get alongside him into turn 4. The question becomes, when do you make that move? Because we're coming to 2 to go next time by. Morgan's got time to redo it to you, but here they go. Down the backstretch, he looks left, and Morgan's going to crowd him over to the grass.
Yeah, but he has established that position out there. Morgan, really early turn in, but lets that car float out a little bit with confidence, knowing he'll get that little bit of grip as he sort of catches the final part of that little bit of banking in turn 4 and keeps Patry behind him. But these guys, now that they're dueling a little bit, Puto and Forrester are right there as well. And we're getting to that point. I think next lap, last 2 laps, gloves are going to be off.
And they are for 5th place already. Rick Singrini and Schooler side by side again.
That was a nice piece of track awareness by Rick Singrini to recognize that Schooler was up inside, left him a car width at the apex, Kyle, and still came through that corner quicker than Schooler. I'll tell you, Jordan Rick Singrini is on the wheel today.
He is, and it's hard to leave a car width at the apex there and ring the outside line. It's a tough turn. It's blind on exit, and you're losing grip because you're coming over a crest. But these two are absolutely nip and tuck right now as they come to their 2-lap to go marker past the stripe.
And did you see that time through the carousel? Rick Singrini could not open it up like he did previously, and as a result, he exited the carousel a lot wider and didn't get as good a run onto the straight. And the reason was that Schooler was close enough he could maybe try and stuff it down the inside, and Schooler faded to the outside and tried to get Rick Singrini to bite, and he didn't. Wow, what a study this is and strategies. But Schooler got a great run out of the keyhole, and he may get to the inside here before Rick Singrini can close the door at that kink.
Well, it was very close for the lead as well, but as I mentioned that, the gap went back up slightly, so we'll watch this side by side here into turn number 4. Rick Singrini on the outside, Schooler on the inside later on the brakes. Leaves space though, Rick Singrini does. They're both a little wide off apex.
Wow, how Rick Singrini didn't run wide there, I don't know, because he was out in that area where there really isn't much grip and somehow hung on to it here. And Giancarlo Schooler's got to be going, what do I have to do? This guy's got an answer for everything I'm throwing at him here. And Giancarlo Schooler is quick, so that's why I mean by Rick Singrini really on game here. Oh, and our lead trio now, they've dropped Beans just a little bit, but look how quickly he just closed it right back up again.
Yeah, and Morgan was a little wide at the exit at turn 10. Here's the white flag, 2.25 miles remaining here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, and this is where it all happens. It's going to be on the back straightaway from the keyhole down to turn 4, but will Patry maybe spice it up by trying it sooner perhaps and throw Morgan off the expectation?
Well, the big thing you got to do here when you make this pass is not only do you have to make the pass, you've got to park Morgan a little bit so he doesn't get a good run. And look at that, Patry, I think, trying to sort of force Morgan to turn in a little bit tighter. Look at Beans looking up the inside of Riceputo there for third. And did Patry get the run?
Game on.
Oh, this is it. This is it. Best overtaking area here. And this is where we're going to see the mindsets play out here. Burkhardt staying right down center of the track. This time, though, Patry getting a nice run. And there you see Morgan again, straight lines to the apex. Patry this time going to try and cut back a little quicker. He's there, side by side. Oh, but he floats way wide.
And that'll leave him vulnerable. Riceputo gets into Forster. They make contact there. As Forster was there, Riceputo moved left to avoid Patry, but they all sorted back out into the order that they were running. By the way, Rick Singrini and Schooler side-by-side contact.
Same spot, and Giancarlo Schooler was turning in. And Rick Singrini was already there, but Giancarlo had to turn, and just a little bit of a bump and go there, and that's allowing Nichols. Look at him. He is flying right now, closing up. He's made up about 6 seconds on these guys because of their battling. This is fierce. Ooh, Rick Singrini a little wide, but we saw him run that line before. But here we go, last turn, and the kid, Morgan Burkhardt, has survived the onslaught from Patry. He will come through, sweep the day. Patry another second place, and Riceputo barely hanging on over Forster. What's happening in this one, Kyle?
Here they come back to the checkers. Rick Singrini holds off Giancarlo Schooler, wipes the sweat from his brow, and picks up a checkered flag in 5th place. Schooler 6th. Murphy Nichols will have to settle for 7th. Those two, Rick Singrini and Schooler, they were absolutely hip and shoulder there on that last lap, but Jordan held them off.
He did. I'll tell you what, Nichols, he was throwing down some laps at the end of that. Like I said, even before those guys in front started to really battle, he was running about a second quicker than they were. And then when they started scrapping, man, he was right there coming with a big head of steam. Another couple of laps, who knows? But wow, great battles as usual here in this Full Send Sims iRacing Esports Spec Miata Season 2. Everywhere we're looking, there is some fabulous racing going.
They're still going at it here on the cool-down lap.
They are. Now they're drifting.
Yeah, they're just having some fun with it. Let's have a look at our race results here, though, before we talk to our top 3. Morgan Burkhardt again. As you mentioned, Greg, sweeping the week. But Caleb Patry was right there, so it wasn't as powerful as a sweep as it has been in the past. Will it switch the lead back over to Burkhardt in the points? Probably, but it's not going to get him far away from that 998, who is clearly competitive and going to be running for the championship either way.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And obviously, Riceputo coming in here, having a good season and sitting 3rd in the points. But the problem for him was it's a 5-point margin coming in between Patry and Burkhardt, 10 from Burkhardt back to Riceputo, and then another 5 back to Giancarlo Schooler. And without Soto here, Beans Forster is actually going to make up some ground in the points. And so that'll be important as well as we take a look here at our top 10. And again, just fabulous battles everywhere. Murphy Nichols showing some speed, and Trey Skip Brock coming up through the field a little bit. Everybody, the one thing you know is everybody's having fun.
Yeah, we saw some smiling, especially in that first race. with Beans battling the Delta Sport guys up front. They're having a blast. Here's a look at the rest of the order. Max Benkin, a night to forget for him. Same with Wayne Buttermore and Bob Williams. Gianni Morrow, we saw that crash that took him out late in the race there in Rocco Pasquarella. A motor expiring on that number 95. So that's the results for race number 2. And in just a moment, we'll talk to our top 3, Rice Sputo, Patry, and Burkhardt. And they're waiting for us now. Let's talk with our third place driver, Nick Rice Sputo, who brings it home in third. Never had a shot at the top spot there while Caleb and Morgan were fighting there, Nicholas. But great battles to watch all night. What'd you see out the windshield in race 2?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a super tight track, so it's really hard to pass. So I was just hoping they were going to make contact and then I could take advantage, but that never seemed to happen.
I mean, you certainly had a couple of opportunities where you could have roughed up somebody a little bit, and I respect you a lot for not doing that. There were a couple of moments where you were able to look to get a nose inside here and there, but it, as you said, not an easy place to pass. These cars are so equal. All you guys are so talented as drivers, and you don't make a lot of mistakes. None of you do, and that's kind of what at this track is the easy way to get through on a pass. But this track is clearly an absolute blast to drive.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's very flowy. And I knew if I started to fight Caleb, then we were just going to lose Morgan, so I figured I'd just sit behind them.
Well, and it made sense, and you kept it interesting right up to the end there. Congratulations again. Having a really good season, and you're just really, in my mind, been watching you. You were good in the first season. You've stepped it up in this one. Just really impressed with your driving. Well done.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Nick. We'll see you next week.
Have a good one.
Thank you. We'll move on now. Let's talk to Beans Forster. Was up in the mix there in race number 1, finished 4th in race number 2. Beans, we saw the smiles on your face there as you were battling for the lead in race number 1. And race 2 is a P4, so decent points tonight, but I had some great scraps, and it was fun to watch. How enjoyable is that to battle door-to-door with someone, especially drivers you can trust?
It's so much fun. It's what I love to do, racing like this, and makes me work up a sweat, so.
Well, hey, tell us what happened when you were coming out of the Top of Madness that one time, and I think it was you and Nick just touched, and it almost looked like you thought Nick was going to fade left like you normally would too, and you kind of edged over that way. What was it, from your perspective?
Yeah, I couldn't really find anywhere else to pass, so I figured if I can get alongside of him, maybe I can ruin his entry into the right-hander coming out of Madness. So I just tried to kind of sneak it up on the inside there because it looked like he had maybe a little bit too much speed and he was going to go wide, but I guess he kind of rung it back in a little earlier, so I lifted up, made sure I didn't send him into the wall.
Well, yeah, obviously we appreciate that because the racing was good. There were a couple of times in the second race you had to make some ground up where you dropped off just a little bit. Those guys weren't fighting too much. So, I mean, you definitely had some pace.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I kind of just took my head down and stopped squeezing the brake pedal so hard to try and coast it into the entries of the corners a little bit. And I think that's kind of what helped me.
Well, it was, as always, Beans, it's a pleasure to watch, man. Well done.
Yeah, thank you guys. Awesome broadcast.
Thanks,
we
Beans.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you guys.
And second place in this one is Caleb Patry. Came in as the points leader. And as far as where the points stand now, Caleb, it's going to be real tight between you and Morgan. Second place in both races tonight. Gave it all you had there, but Morgan just had a little bit more. What could you have done different on that final lap, if anything?
I honestly don't really know. This track is pretty notorious for being hard to pass at. There's really only 2 good passing opportunities here, and if you go offline, it's pretty hard to make it stick, especially with these cars in this setup. The tires kind of wear down before the end of the race, so that makes it difficult. But I don't really know. We were pretty close there that last lap. I tried making a move. I tried over-undering them through China Beach, and then just went a little too wide at the top of the hill, and that was kind of it after that. But I really don't know. Maybe attacked a little sooner. Hopefully I could have tried to get ahead of him if I made my move sooner, and then just kind of defended after that. But who knows?
Well, I kind of liked your approach, because it looked like you were working him for a couple of laps. trying to figure out what his thing was going into turn 4 at the end of the back straight. And he kept protecting right down the middle. You'd get to the outside. But, normally you just, you could run the outside, but then he would turn in early straight line to the apex and somehow still be able to keep it on track in the grip area at the exit. And I thought your move to square him up on that last one, the way you did after watching what he was doing, was just exceptional. And yeah, he obviously just slowed it a bit too much speed up to the top, but what a great effort. And it's just fun watching you, Morgan, Nick, all you guys strategizing out there and trying to figure out, where's the spot, what can I do, how can I set them up. Just so much fun, man. And you are driving so brilliantly this season, leading the points coming in here, and just a treat, really.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like you guys alluded to, the points battle is definitely going to be tough. Morgan's obviously very quick, pretty much everywhere we go. But hopefully a little luck will swing my way in these next few rounds.
Be fun to watch, Caleb. Thanks for chatting, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Well, Morgan Burkhardt in victory lane again. Maybe no surprise there. What was a bigger surprise was coming in not leading the point standings, Morgan. It should turn back your favor after this weekend. But looking forward, you've definitely got a battle on your hands with Caleb Patry breathing down your neck in every one of these races. You were able to hold him off. How so?
It's awesome. Caleb, he's super fast, and we're always really clean with it. But I knew that towards the end of the race that this car, the way that it eats its tires, if you hold the inside going into a corner, that's like the only way to defend. Because the guy on the outside, they don't have enough tire left to actually hold it, and it doesn't stick no matter how hard you try. So going into the final few laps, I knew that all I had to do was just kind of protect the inside, especially into China Beach. I kept hooking it up coming out of the keyhole, and then coming inside, giving him just enough space to stay on the track and brake, and then kind of go deep into China Beach, and then exit the corner on the left side so that he had no hope of shooting it up the inside going into madness.
Yeah, I was watching how you were working that, and what impressed me was you had that early turn in down there, and yet you were able to keep it into a grip area and not running too far out where you can lose the grip out there on the edge. You mentioned that these cars eat the tires. Is the track hard on tires in these cars, or is it just the setup on the cars?
It is definitely the track, because other tracks this season, it's not been as bad, and I think the track temperature combined with the way that the track is shaped, it's hard on tires, and you really have to be careful about it, because there's a lot of corners like the carousel and the keyhole where it's braking, it's hard braking, and it's turning, and then you get ABS, and that flames tires. And I've actually looked at data about this, going over it with people, and braking into a corner without ABS, just kind of flickering with the ABS versus full ABS and turning, it's like a 40 or 50 degree difference in spike. So you have to kind of roll into the corner with a little bit less braking force. You brake a little bit earlier, but you carry a little bit more speed, and it doesn't kill tires. So it's a trick that I've learned over the last season or two. But yeah, definitely this track is, the way that it's shaped, is not easy on tires.
Yeah, and I think that's a great insight into the braking, because oftentimes when you brake really hard, you overslow as well. And if you brake a little earlier and a little bit more gently, especially in a car that can roll apex speed like these, that's a really effective tool. And obviously you've figured out how to use it. So as always, just a great fun to watch. Got to ask you one quick question. What happened on the start of the second race?
It's again with the way that this track is shaped. The pole sitter, they have to run the outside of the carousel, so they're kind of pacing it a little bit more, and then the inside has to slow up to not pass the pole sitter, and then when they speed up to get back even with it, the green is coming out. So through no fault of their own, just through the way the track is made, getting the green at the apex of the final corner gives the right line a little bit of an advantage, and I didn't jump on the throttle real quick, and I wasn't in second gear when I probably should have been, and I bogged in third. But I was kind of that in the first start. I was just like, discretion is probably the better part of valor. It's lap one, turn one. I don't really feel a need to go bonsai.
That makes good sense. As the old adage says, you rarely win a race in the first corner, but you could sure lose it there. So well played.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I just noticed the graphic on the back of his car.
I was trying to read
Wonder
that.
Slug?
Zippy the Wonder Slug.
Yeah, baby. Love it.
All right, Morgan. Hey, thanks so much. We'll see you next week at CTMP.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, that was a wild one. And while it was a smaller field, it did not disappoint. There was some great action all night long through the entire field of 15. But Morgan Burkhardt sweeps this one. Wasn't easy. Next week, though, CTMP, longer straightaways and much higher speeds in the corners. It should be a good battle, but it is consequential. So we'll see that next Monday. But it's going to get interesting out there for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, massively fast and much bigger elevation drops and climbs than this place. So it's about as different as it can be, and it'll be just as fun, just at a lot more speed, no question. I want to remind everybody once again that Thursday night, if you've never had any experience with Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Thursday night, 7 p.m., there will be a school. Full Send Sims will be conducting a school that with the Sims. So just go to fullsendsims.com and you can learn a little bit about Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, because that's what the school will be about. As always, a massive thank you to Full Send Sims. And hey, practice makes podium. That's what Full Send Sims is all about. And they build absolutely remarkable rigs. Big shout out again to 3P Logistics and Final Turn Motorsports, our presenting sponsors, for their absolutely wonderful support. And as always, Kyle, absolute treat working with you, and what fun it was here. Can't wait for CTMP. And just want to tell everybody, if you're in the, what would it be, the Western Michigan area this coming weekend, go see what's unfolding at the Midwest Festival for Grid Life at Gingerman Raceway. It is an absolute blast, and don't miss that if you have the opportunity. And Kyle will be there as well.
Yeah, can't wait for it. Grid Life Midwest starting on this Friday through Sunday. It'll be a blast. Biggest event of the year for Grid Life, so hopefully we'll see some of you there. We'll see you all next week. Canadian Tire Motorsport Park for the FSS Esports Spec Miata Series.